Very often, when you see heads of state in official ceremonies and appearances, they are always dressed to the nines. Their gestures, words, and looks are perfectly orchestrated so that there is no misstep. Everything is organized to the millimeter so that there are no unpleasant surprises live. And yet, we grant you, Francois Hollande has set the bar very high, but you still haven't seen President Putin, Macron, or Joe Biden in very embarrassing situations. So embarrassing that you wouldn't want to be in their shoes, even if it's to be president. Here are some very embarrassing moments that some heads of state have experienced live. With Donald Trump, nothing surprises us anymore. Then, all things considered, if on February the 4th, 2020, during the former US president's traditional annual State of the Union address to Congress, Trump ostensibly provoked the Democratic leader of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, as she arrived at the lectern, intentionally avoiding shaking her hand. What a nerve! After concluding the speech with the best part, it's still to come. Nancy Pelosi will respond to this affront by tearing up the copy of Trump's speech, which, by the way, lasted 78 minutes. And, to make matters worse, she will not only tear it in two, but in four, just to make herself look good. In any case, it was successful because the whole audience noticed this gesture that ridiculed once again the former American president and that secretly pleased the Democrats present at his exit from the House. Pelosi will add a layer by declaring that it was the most courteous gesture she could do. What would it have been like if she had been even the slightest bit discourteous? During her tenure as Australian Prime Minister, Julia Gillard has been invited to many official ceremonies and visits, but the ones she made to India will always be remembered, especially by us. The Australian Prime Minister showed up that day dressed in a nice black shirt and an ivory jacket. Gillard was to lay a wreath at the Gandhi Memorial in New Delhi, when suddenly, while everyone had their eyes on her, the former Prime Minister took a spectacular fall, but fortunately not very serious, after the heel of her shoe slipped and sank into the grass. Hard, the life of a working woman. Either Julia Gillard immediately got up with the help of officers and then resumed her journey, certainly swallowing her tears but still looking stoic. At the press conference, she tried to be self-deprecating or classic by addressing the men and telling them that if they ever walked in heels, they might sink into the grass and that their shoes dead from their feet. To Australian humor anyway. The video made a big buzz on the internet and made the press talk about the week, to the great displeasure of Julia Gillard. For the anecdote, she had lost some time earlier in pumps by escaping a crowd of angry protesters, and the shoe has quickly found its place on eBay. Later, she lost another pump while going on stage in Sydney, a real Cinderella of modern times. It seems that the good Lord has a grudge against the Russian Patriarch Kirill, the famous day when he got the shame of his life, and I think I know why this happened. In June 2022, during the consecration of a church, the Patriarch will at some point slip on the holy water and fall on the marble floor, breaking his buttocks in the process. Maybe she wasn't so blessed with water. All kidding aside, the worst part is that he wouldn't let himself be helped due to coronavirus restrictions. I firmly believe in divine vengeance because a few days after the beginning of Russia's war against Ukraine, Patriarch Kirill had supported Russia's aggression and even congratulated the army for killing Ukrainians. A few months later, he gave a speech at the Russian Armed Forces Church praising Russian soldiers for their bravery. War or not, you never praise someone for committing murder. That's what we call karma. Well, I want to believe that in the Philippines, it is very humid. It's the perfect climate for cockroaches, but frankly, being on a president's podium, it's kind of creepy. While he was making a serious speech at an election rally, the former Philippine president, Rodrigo Duterte, was interrupted by a cockroach that tried to climb up his shirt. Noticing that an assailant will come to get rid of it, but he will not succeed. The ex-president chased the insect away with a wave of his hand and continued his speech as if nothing had happened.
I think you know better than I do.
On June 18, 2022, Joe Biden was in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, a small seaside town where he often spends weekends in his oceanfront villa. The president was on a ride, perched on his bike at one point, while he was in front of reporters and onlookers eager for unedited footage and watching the president's every move. The latter will fall from his bike and wallow on the ground after having lost his balance. The American president had intended to stop to talk to passersby and journalists who were waiting for him. But as he stopped, his foot got stuck in the pedal. He then fell sideways. Fortunately, he escaped without a scratch. As a distraction, he began to trade with them as if to prove that he was indeed fine despite the fall. The pose lasted only 5 minutes. Then he was back on the road with his wife Jill Biden, who joined him in the meantime. He was lucky in this one because in November 2020, Joe Biden had fractured his foot while playing with one of his German shepherds. The 79-year-old president now has to keep a close eye on his health, at the risk of not lasting long in the White House. By dint of waging war on everyone, it seems that Russian president has made more enemies than friends. The proof is that very often he gets wind from people he wants to greet by extending his hand. For example, here he extends his hand to a cook who will avoid extending his hand in return. Putin will then take the wind in his face and hope that nobody has seen the scene. It was a failure. Or during this official meeting, the president will extend his hand to this head of state who will also dodge the handshake during the ceremony, bringing together several great heads of state. One man voluntarily ignored Putin's greeting by skipping it a cold wind that he received impassively, with the phlegm and legendary apathy that we all know the Russian president. And here again, Kim Jong-un pretended not to have seen that Vladimir was holding out his hand. These are extremely embarrassing moments for the Russian president, especially since they are always filmed by journalists, cameras, and broadcast around the world. In this sequence, Joe Biden had just landed, accompanied by his wife. As he puts his foot on the ground, he tries to put on his jacket, but has trouble doing so. Yes, that's what it means to have aged. He will try to put it on, but will not succeed without the help of his wife, who, facing the situation, will come to his rescue and help him to put it on. What would these heads of state do without their wives? The funny thing is that after putting on his jacket, he accidentally drops his glasses on the floor. That day, his clothes and accessories were definitely on the wrong side of him. If you know the president of the French Republic, well, you will know that he has a dog named Nemo, a dog that he follows almost everywhere. But sometimes Nemo has unusual behaviors that put Emmanuel Macron in grotesque and funny situations. In this video, for example, while the president had invited 3 members of the government to the Élysée Palace to discuss serious matters, Nemo suddenly had an urge. You guessed it. The young Labrador suddenly went to the chimney of the Élysée Palace, raised his paw, and took his ease by urinating on it. The situation was so funny that the discussion had to be interrupted, and Benjamin Griveaux, Secretary of State to the Minister of Economy and Finance, Bruno, by his Secretary of State to the Minister of Ecological Transition and Solidarity, and Julien de Normandie, Secretary of State to the Minister of Territorial Cohesion, as well as the President himself. Everyone then began to laugh at the situation. In his defense, Macron, extremely embarrassed, will then justify himself by saying that his dog had never done that before and that he did not understand why he urinated in the chimney. According to him, it was exceptional. He then tried to tease his callers by blaming them and saying that they were the ones who had triggered the unusual behavior in his pet. Of course, the LCI channel did not miss this scene and did not hesitate to broadcast it either. Thank you, Nemo.
Travailler sur la question de la mobilité du futur notamment.
De faire un truc assez...
Je dis quel est ce bruit?
Small question. Have you ever seen Putin making pancakes? Yes, it exists. The proof in pictures. Okay, it's not the joke of the year. We'll give you that. But it did make you smile a little bit. Admit it. During the Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok, Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping had the opportunity to swap their head of state caps for housewife aprons and make pancakes. Yes, you heard right. On the pictures, we noticed that the Russian president was not quite at ease with the spatula and the frying pan, and that cooking good food is not his forte. We can see that he only wanted to put down the apron and run away. But when you are president, you have to set an example. And when it comes to making pancakes, for the time being, it's really a pancake. There's no photo. Everyone pretended to be proud of the Russian president because nobody would dare to tell the great Putin that his pancake was a failure. It would be a real outrage. Even worse, it would be blasphemy. In any case, what is certain is that he is stronger in war than in cooking. While he was visiting Riyadh, capital of Saudi Arabia, to meet with high dignitaries and in particular the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Prince Saud Al Faisal, Prince Charles created the buzz of the century by lending himself to the game of the Saudis. Indeed, after the official meeting, he went to the cultural festival of Zaina Andrea. As soon as he entered, he was invited to dance the traditional dance of Arda, known as the sword dance. For this, the Prince of Wales had to swap his costume for a dress and a red and white checkered keffiyeh and took a sword that he brandished to the rhythm of the drums. Following the other dances in their choreography, it is true that the prince has the habit of blushing quickly. But there, it did not take much for us to feel his embarrassment to make strange steps. Dressed in a funny outfit, I bet he would have preferred to dine in the lead with his mother, Queen Elizabeth. Well, to help him fit in better, he was accompanied by the Prince Macron bin Abdulaziz, half-brother of King Abdullah, and the son of the Saudi ruler. On the other hand, one person was missing that day, his wife Camilla Parker Bowles. Fortunately, by the way. Otherwise, I didn't dare to imagine what would have happened to her. Well, we agree. Having the Saudi crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman talk like that is either he has a beginning of Parkinson's or he is very but is really very nervous and he cannot stand stressful situations.
الأخوة متفقين 100% في كل شيء. مع إدارة وإدارة أمريكية قد يزيد هامش الاختلاف أو يقل.
I prefer to believe that it is the second option. During an interview in which the Crown Prince had to talk about political issues of great importance, the latter began to have uncontrollable tic in front of the camera, trying as best he could to address his interlocutor without letting anything show. But let's admit it, even a blind guy could note the face. In any case, it is not a simple tithe from a future leader of some Saudi Arabian world wealth. Take a chill next time. What do you think? Now tell us in the comments what you think about these embarrassing sequences, and don't forget to subscribe and click here to watch another of our videos.